Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Roster cuts have begun, and we already have a Vikings trade.
Oh, hey, hi. It's Arif Hassan from Wide Left Substack. I'm on my phone monitoring cuts. It's important.
Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman. Roster one, cut one, trade one, practice squad one, Minnesota Football Party edition. Who makes the team? Comment below.
What's up? I'm Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings. And you know more than me at this point because cuts will happen all day.
Coming up next on the Minnesota Football Party.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party.
Happy Monday, a new week on the Minnesota Football Party. Welcome in. You met us already. I'm Sam Ekstrom, joined by Luke Inman, Luke Braun, and Arif Hassan, talking Vikings football for the next hour, and so much to get to. Roster cuts, trades, preseason game number 3, and Trey Lance traded not to the Minnesota Vikings. What a disappointment. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook partner of Locked On. Head to FanDuel.com/Locked On to make every moment more and hear about a great new FanDuel promotion a little later in the show. Please comment below. Let us know what you think. Let us know in general what you think of the show, whether you are enjoying the content, and B, tell us about what you think of the trade the Vikings made, Vidarian Lowe to the Patriots for a 6th-round pick. Let's start off discussing that. Oh, wait, we've got a little bit of breaking news. What's the latest?
This most certainly didn't happen before we start. This happened right now, definitely.
Yeah.
Calvin Avery is the latest.
No. Yeah, the biggest of the nose tackles.
Pretend you don't know already.
Yeah.
Hey, Braun, do that thing you do with the you do like a little eulogy for all the cut people.
I have to update that thread. Calvin Avery, who was, or RIP to Calvin Avery, whose career really exploded when he finally started taking his weight training seriously, or his like body management seriously. But
big dude,
so far.
Big dude,
hold on.
Monster. I really tried to make him a
his
thing.
enormous size is like.
Oh, it was like when he got to college, it was like unacceptable. And
was it like Zach Banner, like 400 pounds?
Like
Banner, I don't know what the number was.
Yeah,
but it was like his whole thing was like, oh, if I like actually take my diet seriously, things can like kind of.
That rules. That reminds me of we're talking more about Calvin Avery than I intended. Reminds me of Brandon Brooks, who did like the combine at like 346 pounds, ran faster than any 346 pounder ever should, turned into one of the best zone guards that you'd ever expect out of a 320 plus pound guard.
It is so much harder to follow roster cuts without TweetDeck. I really don't like it, but the cut
I'm thinking of caving, Sam. I'm thinking of caving.
I am too. I've literally had TweetDeck as a tab on my laptop up for my entire professional career. Like, I can't think of a time when I didn't have it just giving me the latest in real time. Very frustrating.
Is TweetDeck now a feature of Blue? I thought it just died.
No, it is a feature of Blue. And they gave you... Go ahead.
Yeah, so if you open TweetDeck, so I have a TweetDeck inside a container app, so I've always got a separate app that's just TweetDeck. So if you open up TweetDeck, it gives you a little pop-up that's like, hey, you're looking for a TweetDeck. I bet you missed that. Good news.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
And it gives you a little like, and then if you like click out of it, if you're like, I'm not a Twitter Blue person, if you click out of it, it's just Twitter. The app is just Twitter. Slightly worse because it doesn't update as quickly as the web version. But it is a little bit convenient to have a separate Twitter because, again, I have it containerized in its own app. It is slightly convenient to have Twitter as its own window. But TweetDeck. I love it. Come back,
please. It makes all the sense in the world that they would make it a premium service because it is so great.
You don't know that, Luke. Vidarian Lowe can come back next year. Yeah,
that's true.
The cuts thus far: Calvin Avery, Tanner Vallejo, Wilson Huber, and Jared Williams. I think I got that right, and that does not include the trade Vidarian Lowe to the Patriots for a 6th-round pick. Luke Inman will give you the first crack here. I thought Lowe beat out Oli Udoh in the competition. I thought he was your third tackle. And maybe this speaks to their confidence in Blake Brandel. Even though he hasn't been playing tackle, they like his potential to be able to play tackle in a pinch. And clearly, Oli Udoh, they still think can be this guy as well. What do you make of the trade?
Yeah, I'm with you. I thought he beat out Udoh as well. I thought he had a good camp, good preseason. Also, KOC and Wes Phillips mentioned him by name in a presser and said the same thing. I just assumed this whole time he was locked in. Then you start to do some digging. You kind of realize from a cap perspective. And I guess at this point now, too, 12 hours later, I'm trying to justify it, glass half full, so to speak. But if you do cut Udoh instead, you lose out on an extra $1.5 million, something like that. So that's kind of tough to swallow. And then also people forget, as bad as his bad reps are, which, I mean, not a hot take, they can be downright awful. But when he did fill in for Brian O'Neill last year, he wasn't that bad. His PFF trades were fine, right? I think it was like 13th best tackle out of 56, something like that. 3 hurries on 108 pass reps. So we always think about those 2 or 3 terrible reps first when we think of Oli Udoh. But all in all, especially just knowing how bad the offensive line play in the league is right now, he's good enough. I mean, he's a capable backup swing tackle. And to get your 6th-round pick back for Vidarian Lowe, coupled with the salary cap issues on top of that, it makes it a little bit easier to understand. I think just the logic, the mindset they were in to kind of pull a move like that off. So now my question is, I think now that dust is starting to settle, do they only keep 8? Do they roll with 8 offensive linemen? Or is there a move already in the works for a guy like Dalton Reisner, and they just wanted to open up that roster spot now and get an extra pick back in the process? I'd be curious, your guys' take, actually. What's your guys' thinking as far as rolling with 8 offensive linemen? I'd be really curious, actually, to add up in the NFL how many other teams have started to do that and if it's kind of becoming a thing.
They've been searching so hard for tackle depth.
I know.
I think that they're dying for reasonable tackle depth. And I think they're watching who's going to get cut in terms of who will actually take Vidarian Lowe's spot on that roster.
I think that that's a possibility. I think that 8 offensive linemen is only on the cards if they're reasonably confident that Chris Reed can be pupped and then come back within those 4 weeks, right? Or I shouldn't say within, right? Because pup
6 weeks, or is it 4 now?
Is this okay?
It
was always 6.
They've messed with some of those rules.
It changes all the time.
Yeah. We can look that up live on the show. But there are it's different than injured reserve designated to return and stuff like that. So if you put a player on the reserve pup list on the roster cut down deadline, must miss at least the team's first 4 games down from 6 seasons prior to 2022. Players can be activated immediately after such time has elapsed. So remember, in previous versions, after you were activated from pup, there was 3 weeks where they were just practicing or whatever. So the pup list is a lot more generous than it was in the past. So you have to miss 4. You can miss more than that. And then after 4, you can be activated basically immediately. So I'm wondering if Chris Reed, they're thinking about that. That gives you a guard that allows you to push Blake Brandel out to tackle, right? So now you've got Oli Udoh and Blake Brandel out to tackle. You got Chris Reed at guard. You've got Austin Schlottman at both guard and center. And that gives you 9 once Reed comes back. And I'm also wondering if maybe they just really like Josh Sokol a lot. I don't know.
And you've got elevations. You can elevate. Yeah. You can have 2 offensive linemen on the practice squad and elevate one every single week until Chris Reed is healthy. So that makes sense.
And you only have 8 active on game day. So, I mean, all of those could play a role. I think, Luke's understanding that it's possible that they're looking at roster cuts is, I think that's on the table too. I would say that tackle depth hurts everywhere across the league. So that would be a pretty difficult strategy to pursue unless they've got their eye on a specific person that they really think has a really high likelihood of being cut. The same way, who's the guy they signed off the Jaguars practice squad?
Rashad Hill. Yeah, that's the kind of thing. Or even someone on the practice squad, because they don't even really have somebody they're not putting Jared Williams on their practice squad.
They don't have
I don't think anybody's really taken that spot either. Speaking of Chris Reed, however, Ben Gessling just tweeted out that I don't think this is news. I think this is just a report, but apparently late last week. All right, play the sound. He reworked his contract a little bit where he used to have a $1.4 million base with $600K guaranteed, so a $2 million contract. He now gets a fully guaranteed base of only, I think that's the veteran minimum, $1.165 million, which is fully guaranteed. So
they increase his guarantee and decrease his total potential take home, but increases guarantee.
So by almost half, yes, but now it's all guaranteed.
So put that through the analytics translator. What does that mean in layman's terms?
So he's making it. He's making it whether it's pup or probably pup.
Well,
and then
that's probably for and it would be NFI because he's on the NFI now. His injury is classified as non-football. I believe it works roughly the same, but it pays out different. So I think it has something to do with that.
It doesn't look like it's veteran minimum because
is that not veteran minimum?
Because Gessling followed it up with a tweet that said the cap number is now 1.5 million. If it was veteran minimum, the cap number would be like 640,000 or something like that.
Oh, okay.
So it reduces the cap number by $250,000.
Partial credit,
not really a surprise at all. I mean, we all assumed.
Oh, but a big incentive is gone. A big not likely to be earned incentive is gone.
That's what it is. Okay,
which, you know.
And again, but not a big surprise because we all assumed, just like Arif pointed out, if they do keep 8, whether they keep 8 or 9, Chris Reed was going to be part of this season's plans, I think, on the interior anyway. So, okay.
But assuming he's available to be, yeah. But I think in terms of the initial 53, as we're all predicting it, I don't think he's going to count toward that.
Yeah.
I just want to give Luke Braun partial credit. If you watch the Locked On Vikings postcast, Luke Braun called a tackle trade. He thought
I picked the wrong one, though.
Would be the guy. I think Vidarian Lowe has
I also
more
would have
value.
picked Oli Udoh if I were to call a tackle trade. I get that.
That's the one that I would have liked them to trade more, honestly.
Like, I personally, I think Vidarian Lowe outplayed Oli Udoh.
I agree.
I think that the difference is significant enough where were I in charge, I probably wouldn't have done that just to get a 6th round pick instead of, a conditional 7th 3 years from now or whatever that you would get for Udoh.
And
but
the money, though,
imagine the Vikings disagree.
Jesse Davis, yeah. I mean, there's also so one thing to kind of keep in mind is that our exposure to Oli Udoh has been primarily at guard, where he's just not good, right? Like Luke said, he played all right in brief, relief of Brian O'Neill at tackle.
That's true.
And so his underperformance in the preseason, and I would argue that that's what it was, is probably not representative of his overall quality or level of play at tackle generally. So the problem is that we've got this anchor on who Oli Udoh is when that's not really kind of the role that he'll be expected to play. So that's probably part of it too. I still would have preferred to trade Oli Udoh over Vidarian Lowe. Like Luke said, there's probably internal, grading that would maybe suggest that Oli Udoh played better than our,
or at least that the difference isn't that big. And hey, let's trade the one we can get a real draft pick for.
Yeah. So, which you had a free camp body, right? Because you get the 6th round back.
Is it wrong of me to gear up mentally that Blake Brandel could be playing a lot more snaps this year than a lot of people maybe are anticipating? Because whether it's Ingram poor play inside at guard,
could be the
right,
first
with Ingram,
backup at 4 positions,
yeah, right. It feels like with Vidarian gone now, specifically at that left tackle, Blake Brandel's like the first name that pops up if any of these guys were to go down or just maybe get subbed out just because of poor play. Who knows?
I do think Udoh, probably because he's been there all camp, probably gets the first crack at tackle.
Left or right?
Either, because I think he's been at both. He's been playing both.
I haven't seen Blake at right tackle at all, and correct me if I'm wrong. So I assume Udoh for sure at right tackle. Left tackle, I maybe would have called it a coin flip, but it sounds like maybe it's more like 80-20. Oli Udoh gets that first crack at left tackle. You could be right.
They had both tackles playing both, and they did the same thing with guards all preseason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Brandel probably handles the interior, Udoh the exterior, and then Brandel would be, God forbid you lose O'Neill and Darisaw, he would be the number 2 guy there.
Yeah, the next tackle as well.
Yeah.
Unless a new guy comes in and joins the mix.
Did anybody affect their 53-man status in the game on Saturday? Let's talk about that after a word from FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook partner of Locked On, and they've got a tremendous new promotion. Nay, two tremendous new promotions going on at FanDuel.com/lockedon right now. Bet $5, get 200 in bonus bets guaranteed. But that's not all. You also get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket, which is now available on YouTube TV. It's off DirecTV now. YouTube TV, the new home of NFL Sunday Ticket. And all it takes is a $5 wager on FanDuel to get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket. Watch all the games every single week. You can't beat a promotion like that. FanDuel.com/lockedon to check it out. And check out all the great promotions that FanDuel is always releasing. It's a very easy-to-use interface to FanDuel Sportsbook app. A great way to get involved with football this season. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Vikings lose their 10th consecutive preseason game on Saturday. 18-17 the score. Luke Braun is... can't bear.
Hey, they were trying to win this one.
Felt like it. Yeah, they were opening up the playbook.
Well,
Flores is like, dude,
they played QB3 the whole game. They weren't trying that hard.
And it begs the question: is Jaren Hall
instead of playing QB4 at any moment, right? Like they had an option of playing Jordan Ta'amu, so they wanted to win within the parameters of preseason. I mean, the broadcast said multiple times, like Kevin O'Connell was like, "Oh my gosh, we haven't won a preseason game since 2019. You know, it'd be good for the culture of the locker room if we won this one." So it seemed very much like this was something that they would desire. And again, like you said, Luke, it's not as if they continue playing the second team throughout the game, right? Like Austin Schlottman played one drive, right?
Yeah, most of the key backups I think played a quarter.
Yeah. So obviously they weren't trying the hardest possible, they weren't putting the most effort, but it still was something that they'd have wanted, which is not something I've seen from a lot of preseason games.
49-10. That is the second half scoring margin in the preseason.
Not bad.
For the Vikes.
We should fire those responsible.
Did anybody avoid firing? Did anybody play themselves onto the roster in this game? Because I thought there were actually a number, and Luke and I talked about this in the postcast, there were a number of bubble guys that I thought played well that may have made this actually a more complicated decision. Arif, let's go reverse this time. Arif, we'll start with you.
So I think Jaren Hall was always going to make the roster, but I think his first half performance was so spectacular relative to expectations again, that it really solidified that he was going to do it. But that doesn't count, right? Because we knew he was probably going to make the roster. I think maybe the best arguments that someone could have made for either a roster spot or a practice squad spot, would be the tight end room just generally. I think Nick Muse made a pretty good argument in his very brief showing on the field, both as a blocker and as a receiver, that he could be a fourth tight end. I thought Dwayne McBride, similar, made a decent argument that he should be the fourth running back. I think Ben Sims made a great argument that he should be on the practice squad, stuff like that. I think defensively, we didn't see as much that would give us that. I think that, for example, if Benton Whitley had I think a pretty good game, right? And whether or not that turns into a practice squad spot, that'd be kind of interesting, but that's kind of the only thing that's on the table. Maybe Sheldon Day made a good argument to be the fifth defensive lineman. I thought that having another great game, after that first one would have helped. I don't know that Andre Carter did anything along those lines. I don't know that we got anything out of linebackers, but that 53-man squad for linebackers, that's already been set. Jay Ward, probably a pretty good argument to be the fifth safety, was probably always going to be a fifth safety as a fourth round pick, but that helps, right? I don't know. Jalen Williams probably off the team. I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree. Specifically on the
Jake Gervais was cut right after the game or something like that, right?
He was very clearly just here for a weekend paycheck, and he was like, "Yeah, that was fun."
Yeah,
hit
how
some
fun
people.
Is that?
Didn't he have a quote that said "I'm hurting right now, but a couple Coors Lights will help it"?
What a guy!
Bring him back.
What this guy in the practice squad?
Yeah, he did.
Sneak him on the squad, baby. Yeah. Come on.
Doesn't he realize Coors Light isn't a partner of the Minnesota Vikings? That's why they cut him.
That's why they cut him. Yeah,
branding faux pas.
Jake Gervais made Andrew Booth look worse. That's why he got cut.
That's funny. Braun, what do you think?
I was gonna say Sheldon Day. If there's anybody that was not on the 53 that could have changed that. Sheldon Day has had 2 fantastic preseason games to the point where you like have to take it a lot more seriously than you probably were going into camp.
Someone asked me if this was a T.Y. McGill scenario, and I hope not. He was like pretty good.
It could
for the
be
49ers.
still. It could, yeah. That was a big oopsie. But I feel like I don't know if they learned their lesson from it. But that like interior room, like in a roundabout way, like kwesi-adofo-mensah was unable to play in the game. Kevin O'Connell said afterwards he was hurt. And we actually talked a lot about like Andrew Booth and Joanne Williams. Joanne Williams was hurt.
Joanne Williams hurt, which
was announced like 2 seconds after we finished the postcast. So we were like immediately wrong. But as like for kwesi-adofo-mensah, in a way, like that's a terrible thing because you don't play, and then the guy that would have been either next to you on the D line or rotating with you on at that position has like the game of his life. That sucks.
Same thing. That backup defensive line situation is just going to be really tough to trim down. It's tough. You go into the 3rd preseason game and it's like, okay, of these 53 roster spots, like 45 of them almost are already locked up. So it's tough to say black and white, like one game, this very last game, clinched a roster spot for some of these guys. But I think about that D-line spot and rotation. It's like, okay, first of all, you keep it 5 or 6. I think they keep 5. I think we talked about that last week. Second, you guys are right. Like there's about 3 or 4 of these guys that made it really tough to feel good about waiving now after that game. If you're a coach, Sheldon Day, TJ Smith, Ross Blacklock had a sack. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Jaquel and Roy. I mean, that entire rookie class really impressed that last game. I think that was the big winner. I think Kwesi's got to feel good and go to bed sleeping easy at night. Ending on that note, for a lot of these guys, they're going to end up sitting on the bench for the next 3-4 months. At least they got to end on a high note and have some momentum in their back pocket, I think. Jay Ward, Jaquel and Roy, Dwayne McBride have scored 2 touchdowns this preseason. If anything, he's starting to look like maybe he could turn into somewhat of a goal line running back somewhere down the road. Obviously, Jaron Hall looked pretty clean outside that 1 interception. That was encouraging. That was the big win, I think, the big takeaway. But the defensive line, as far as roster spots go, again, Sheldon Day, TJ Smith, Ross Blacklock had a sack. That makes things tough. Where does Sezi, like Luke said, where does Sezi fit into this whole equation? Jonathan Bullard, do you want to keep at least one veteran? You're never going to be mad when guys play good, obviously, but I will say I just think that game just makes things a lot tougher for KOC when it comes down to which guys they want to keep, which guys they want to try to sneak on the practice squad, and which guys they're going to have to cut outright.
I think the hardest thing that when I did the 53-man roster for Locked On Vikings this for this Monday's show, the hardest decision that it came down to was I had 52 guys and I had to choose between Luigi Villan and Nick Muse. And that was really tough.
Did you keep 6? Did you keep Rager? Did you keep 6? Wide
I did keep Rager.
Yeah.
Because
I think if you keep 6 wide
because of punt gunning, I think he's going to make it.
I agree.
And I think he just has done enough.
I agree. And you tell me that at the beginning of training camp, just knowing the OTAs in minicamp that Brandon Powell had, I said, no way.
And that Jalen Naylor had, like, we were still reacting to Jalen Naylor kind of jumping him on the depth chart and all that. Yep. Like, yeah. I think he'll be the 6th one just by virtue of Brandon Powell being a healthy scratch in the Arizona game. But I think he made it still on his merits, and I would definitely keep Rager over both Muse and Villan. But Muse versus Villan, I had to waffle really hard. I ended up going with Villan, but I don't feel good about it at all.
That's tough. I don't necessarily think they correlate directly with one another, but if you keep
it was just I got 52. I can't get rid of. Here's my last 2 guys. What do we do?
For sure, yeah. I think if you keep 6 wide, whether it's 6, it's either 6 wideouts or 4 tight ends. It feels like I don't think you can keep 10 between those 2 positions. Plus 5 running backs, plus 3 quarterback. It's too tough.
Yeah. Arif, you're Rager off the 53?
If my decision is between Villain, Muse, and Rager, yeah, I'm getting rid of Rager.
That's you or what you think they will do?
That's me.
Okay, yeah. I was doing what I think they will do.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's fair enough. The thing with like punt gunning, obviously that's important given our Najee Thompson advocacy. But I do think that like you do have options available to you at punt gunner outside of that, whether or not it's somebody like a Brandon Powell or, forcing Andrew Booth to figure it out. There's, I think, options available to you that aren't that bad. And I really think the 4 tight ends is like relatively important. And I like Villain. I don't know.
Villain played really well. And I think in a more subtle way, and I don't think he's getting as much hype as he deserves for it.
I don't think he is number 53. I think he's higher than that in the power rankings of your rosteries. I don't think he's like on the bubble that much.
It's tough. 5 edge rushers is not like, it's not uncommon, but neither is it the standard, right? So like it is, you're going kind of a little bit out of your way to put him on the roster, whereas 4 tight ends is just a little bit more standard across the league. Maybe not as much if you have a fullback, but it is a little bit more difficult to justify a 5th edge rusher on most teams. So that's like kind of the area that you're dealing with. I do think that he would clear waivers, right? So that's the thing that, you know, you have to keep in mind is like, does Nick Muse clear waivers? Does Luigi Lane clear waivers? I don't think Jalen Reagor necessarily clears waivers, so that might change your, you know, calculus, but that's...
Could Patrick Jones be a cut? I mean, because he clearly was not in the mix to beat out Wanham, right? Could he be cut in favor of Lane? I would do that.
I'm very excited because Luke Braun looks like he's about to die.
You doing simply okay? Sneezed.
Sure. Yeah, no, keep it up.
Yeah. I think a D lineman gets traded. Whether that's Bullard or Pat Jones.
Did Ben Albright just plant the seed into all of our heads and now we keep thinking about it?
Well, then I did the roster and it's like there's like 15 guys
there's
that you could put on a 50,
and none of them have value though. Like, that's the problem.
Like a whole bunch of them that you would feel bad about cutting. So I feel like finding a way to get a draft pick out of one of them is where
Pat Jones would be interesting for a lot of reasons, I think. Yeah.
What about trading Lewis Cine? Whoa, bombshell. Do you think Lewis Cine has like there's politics of trading a first round pick in his second year? I know that. But with the deep safety room, they clearly love Jay Ward. They clearly love Josh Metellus. Theo Jackson has been great. Talk about guys with actual value.
I think that would be a relatively elegant solution to this roster pressure problem. It's so like one thing that you don't tend to see on teams almost at all is 11 defensive backs on the 53. That's extremely rare. Now, one of them being basically a pure special teamer kind of changes the calculus a little bit. But I mean, that's what Marcus Sherrills was too, right? So it's not. So that would resolve the problem. And I'm sure they fielded calls. Like, it would not shock me at all for teams to be like, so this Lewis Cine guy seems to be on the outs. He's really high on our boards. Let's see let's see what we could, you know, what that would cost. My guess is that, you know, seeing a bunch of people, you know, from like the fake news media say that, you know, he's on the outs, that, you know, he's playing poorly, you know, has depressed the potential value from teams asking. I'm sure the Vikings have a price. Adofo-Mensah has like been very clear that you know, hey,
everyone has a price.
Everyone's value, right? And so I'm sure teams have called, and I'm sure that the price the Vikings have either said or the teams have provided is insufficient to make that trade happen. But I do think that help resolve a lot of these issues that we're talking about.
I would rather.
I don't think they do it just because of Harrison Smith being a temporary fixture here. He's eventually he will be gone.
Come on.
Well, Josh Metellus, though, you got to think about it 2024 and beyond. Josh Metellus is a free agent after this year. Cam Bynum's a free agent after.
Not if you trade Lewis Cine.
We're trading Lewis Cine and extending Josh Metellus. Is that the roster?
Yeah.
Is that the elegant solution you are?
I'd rather trade Andrew Booth.
Okay.
And I'd probably draft a guy in the second round next year. But yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we're trading Lewis Cine and then drafting another safety. That's giving up on Lewis Cine to me, and I don't think they want to do that.
I know
you want to do that, but I don't think they do.
I don't agree with that.
I don't think they do.
I wouldn't, even though I asked the question, I wouldn't trade Lewis Cine. I'm with Luke. I'd much rather trade Andrew Booth Jr., who I think has probably much worse value. And Lewis Cine, to me, and we've disagreed with this already on the show, but I'll say it again. I like what I've seen this preseason relative to what I saw last preseason, especially coming off injury. He hasn't lost any of his explosive tools. I think that he can be good. I really think he can be good. And the free agency situation at safety, they do need to restock that cupboard after they lose Metellus potentially and Harrison Smith. So I'm in favor of keeping him, but I did want to ask the question.
Yeah, to Luke's point, I mean, the Vikings have been very vocal about making sure that they give players time and enough chances. I mean, the fact that like Adofo-Mensah said on the broadcast, like, you know, he kind of dismissed how well Jaren Hall was playing. He did later in the broadcast say it's really exciting that he played well, but he's more talking about getting his, you know, quote unquote 10,000 hours in. which unfortunately means that Adofo-Mensah reads Malcolm Gladwell. But other than that, would suggest that
it's ubiquitous enough. We don't know that for sure.
Okay, you're right. But I mean, given who he is and how he approaches these things,
yeah, true.
Yeah, I think it's likely. Which I think he should maybe read Blink then and see kind of what his instantaneous snapshot reaction to Lewis C is.
He has so much in common with 16-year-old me. It's great.
Yeah, that's not a good thing. But yeah, I think that there is something for players that they believe that there's fundamentally just a lot of talent to harvest. Maybe a weird word to use there. That they want to give them a lot of time and opportunities and chances. So I think that that's part of which I guess they didn't do that for Vidarian Lowe, but I think, for a first round pick, it's a little bit different.
Yeah. Assezi did not play, concussion. That's why he wasn't participating in the game. A lot of decisions to make on that defensive line. We'll be reacting to the cuts tomorrow as well on tomorrow's Minnesota Football Party with Luke Inman and myself. And then Wednesday, we'll probably have it all finalized. So talking roster all week here on the Minnesota Football Party, which is partnered with SiriusXM, by the way. Make sure you find all the Locked On Sports Minnesota content, the SXM app. You can also find hometown broadcasts of the Twins games, the Vikings games. Just search Twins, search Vikings. Get Corey Provis calling the baseball games, Paul Allen calling the football games. Check that out. Trey Lance was dealt not to the Vikings. We're going to get to that as well. But while we're talking preseason, while we're talking Vikings, why don't we look at our winner of the preseason fantasy football contest? It got a little tight for me. It got a little tight for yours truly on Saturday, but I did emerge as the winner by about 7 points over Luke Inman, who needed one more touchdown, needed a McBride touchdown, needed a Thompson touchdown to steal it from me at the end. Didn't happen. Luke Braun made a late charge and actually won the week.
But because I had finally Ben Sims had his breakout week.
Abram Smith, big waiver.
If only that 40-yard catch at the very end of the game counted.
I mean, it wouldn't have made enough of a difference for me to change the rankings here, but it would have distanced me from you, which is
who knows?
Always a good thing. Yeah.
My Rager Powell stack.
Sam, are we sure I didn't win? Can we count up all the weeks individually?
Yeah, let's double check that. So Aaron Dykes. Okay, let's go back to your
margin of defeat.
Draft.
25.
There were 11,000 points.
Knowles.
You just have to find them.
You got a flashlight to find Malik Knowles.
3
somewhere?
active players. The entire Troy Dye was your leading scorer. Like, it's not even a question. Troy Dye had 8 tackles and an interception this preseason.
By the way, Arif, we got an open spot in our fantasy league. If you're interested, love to have you.
God,
love to have you.
So the privilege I get is during our regular season gambling contest, I get 1 week where I can choose to double my profits or have my losses, whichever happens. And then I can trigger 1 week where Arif Hassan will have his profits or double his losses. That is what will happen as a result.
Now,
of this.
you have to pick that week prior to the
I think I have
results?
to pick prior.
Yeah, okay. Got it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely pick prior to
like
the
a bonus chip?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
So just to be clear, so that week, and it operates on both of us simultaneously, right? So that week, you double your wins or have your losses. I double my losses or have my wins.
Do you have to do it the same week?
See, I don't know if it needs to be the same for both of us. I think
Really?
I can hold those. Well, what do you think? I think I can hold on to those 2 privileges and play them one at a time.
I think they should be the same week. Obviously, now I'm advocating, now that it's clear, that I would benefit from that rule. But my understanding is always that it was the same week, just because it's you really put the screws to someone on a particular week.
I'm torn between the less confusing option, but also it's, I think, a little bit more fun because it is an earned advantage. I think it's a little bit more fun if Sam can truly maximize it by
it's like
weeks.
Survivor, and he found the hidden immunity idol, and he gets to just bust that baby out
you can use
wants.
Twice. Yeah, no, the immunity idol is something
2.
that you get to use. Oh, okay.
You found 2.
You found 2. All right. I mean, all of you wanted on different weeks, so I guess that makes the most sense.
Just got a breaking news alert from the Vikings.
Twitter up and everything.
Alexander Madison and Salvation Army team up to host Back to School Donation Wednesday, August 3rd.
Good for him.
Sam doesn't troll very often on this podcast. We should encourage it. Good work, Sam.
We're proud of you, man.
Thank you.
Proud of you.
Proud of you, man.
Trey Lance is a Dallas Cowboy, not a Minnesota Viking. It cost a 4th-round pick to bring him there. That's not far off from what I expected. I thought the price might be a 5th. It was a 4th. Now, reportedly, Arif, the Vikings were not even in. The Vikings were not in on this discussion whatsoever. That's what you read or heard?
Yeah, from Kevin Seifert. He tweeted it out.
Kevin Seifert, valid source. Would you have liked the Vikings to make that move for that price?
For a 4th now. Again, I think that if it was for a 6th or 7th, if you traded Trey Lance for Vidarian Lowe, right, that would feel like a win, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. I don't really like. So O'Connell basically laid out like they want to foster an environment where players feel supported and stuff like that. And one of the things is to make sure that they have, support specifically for the quarterback, specifically for developmental guys, to allow developmental guys to develop. And you just don't have space, right? Like,
okay, this one's real.
Yeah.
Garrett Mogg.
Oh, I thought you were responding to what Luke Braun put in the chat.
What did Luke Braun put in the chat? Oh, we got another one.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know who that person is.
No, that's a real person. That's a real person.
Okay, that is a real person.
What's the name?
Colin Thompson.
Colin Thompson, released per Matt Lombardo, who I believe just switched to A to Z Sports, if I remember correctly.
Rest in peace, Garrett Mogg went to my father's alma mater in North Dakota.
Yep. And rest in peace, Colin Thompson, with whom we can all relate because he is a podcaster.
Sorry, Matt Lombardo went to FanBuzz recently, not A to Z Sports. Z's in the name, get confused easily.
Rough day for podcasters.
Back to Trey Lance, Arif.
I love this podcast, man.
So like, of course,
38 things going on.
You don't create an environment where
least
what's going on. In fairness, there's like live breaking news this time, as opposed to most of the time.
Right. We encourage Sam too much now.
It's not good that I'm in control of the button. It's really not.
I think it's great.
Who's got the button?
But yeah, you want to create an environment where players feel supported, where they've got the timeline to develop. So whether or not Jaren Hall is better or worse than Trey Lance is less important than whether or not players have an opportunity to genuinely develop, right? Because with the Cowboys, as soon as they were traded, Will Grier knew he was off the roster, plays that preseason game anyway, plays lights out, by the way. And just like has this press conference where he like cries the whole time right after the game because he knows he's about to get cut, which is a weird thing. And I think the Vikings just kind of want to avoid that generally. And I don't think that that's going to be true throughout, the Vikings tenure. I'm sure that they're going to trade for guys that are going to replace young guys that have yet to develop and stuff like that. But Lance just isn't good enough for you to make the sacrifice to your team culture. I think that's the difference.
And also, too, just stepping off that point, too, as far as like, getting them all this time, the necessary time they needed to develop and progress, the timing of this, too. If this was 4 months ago, I think it'd be completely different, too. And I agree with you. 4th is still too much, but, a 5th is easier to swallow. If this was 4 months ago, completely different. The fact that we are at August 28th, a week and a half before week 1, it's just so much to sit there and try to digest this new playbook and offense and get up to speed so quickly. I agree with you. I just think the timing also plays a factor into this as well.
It was clearly different 4 months ago because the Vikings actually did have conversations before the draft. But then it sounds like once they got a different developmental project quarterback in Jaren Hall, they said, okay, we're going to go with this guy.
Yeah. And
that was kind of the end of that. But it seems to me that the way everybody else was negotiating with the 49ers, that the Cowboys kind of blew up the whole market out. Everybody was talking about like conditional 6th, and the Cowboys were like, bam, here's a 4th round pick. And they slammed it, which I don't know.
Conditions. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, right. Which I don't know. That feels
what
like
condition would
poor
he
market.
So obviously,
I mean, playing time would be the thing, right? I'll give you something if we actually use him.
The issue, of course, is that no team is likely going to trade for him for playing time this year. The condition would be next year. Teams do want to get the return for the 2024 draft, right? And any condition that's based on the 2024 season, et cetera, and so forth. So my guess is that a trade package for Lance would likely be something like a 5th, 6th round pick with a condition for a 2025 pick based off of playing time. That could go all the way up to a 3rd or all the way down to a 7th.
So we did the whole clickbait thing where we talked about the Vikings trading for Lamar Jackson. That never happened. We did the clickbait thing about the Vikings trading for Trey Lance. That didn't happen. Who is the next quarterback that we can speculate about?
Dak Prescott.
Garner clicks. Okay.
Now that Trey Lance is here to replace him, which will definitely happen.
For sure. For a 4th round. I mean,
or Kyler.
Dak was a 4th round pick.
Maybe
right?
Clayton Tune is the next Brock Purdy, and then Kyler will be expendable.
I think Aiden O'Connell is going to take over that Vegas job, and Jimmy G's going to be out on the streets next year. Watch out for Jimmy
G. I think
G.
Kyler and the Cardinals are barreling toward a bitter divorce.
Who is?
So Kyler Murray and the Cardinals.
Oh, God, that would be funny.
I mean, it has to, right? He's not going to play out that whole contract with Arizona.
No.
With all the things going on behind the scenes there?
No.
So, so you
homework
could,
clause
again,
and all that?
No, I mean, they're going to draft Caleb Williams next year.
Continue the pipeline of Cardinals players to the Vikings. So, from the worst team facility to the best.
Exactly.
There were like a tenth of their roster used to play in Minnesota, and like half of their coaching staff.
Oh, see, there you go. Which I didn't realize that Jonathan Gannon was a quality control assistant for the Vikings.
Yeah. He was assistant D-line or assistant cornerback?
Defensive backs. Assistant defensive backs.
Gary Gray.
Outside of Chris Boyd, who you got? Zach McLeod?
Zach McLeod, Davion Davis, who had a sweet touchdown.
Who got the touchdown.
That was really good.
Yep. David Blau.
Which was that on Jalen Williams? Somebody was like late to react.
It was.
Jalen Williams.
Yeah. That was such a stupid touchdown, too. Like, imagine if that was a regular season moment where the quarterback throws a blind, like...
Oh, we won't have to imagine.
This is
the zero blitz
Flores
team?
defense.
This is what we do.
This is, Wait a minute. You're going to see this. Like, the idea is not to reduce explosive plays. It's to maximize them and hope that you fall on the positive side of the ledger defensively.
Okay, I'm having... serious flashbacks to
write that down.
To the Arizona game and when Zimmer sent that.
Oh my gosh, exactly right. That's exactly right.
And Kyler escaped and threw a YOLO ball 80 yards downfield. And who was done? It was good coverage, but
who's the most insane quarterback on our schedule?
Who was that cornerback? Sam, do you remember? Who was the cornerback that got beat?
So it would have been either Rashad.
Oh, I think it was on like Mackenzie Alexander
or McKenzie.
Yeah, I think it was Matt.
Well,
that was a 4th down, wasn't it?
I remember a Rondale Moore catch where Patrick Peterson was nominally in coverage, although personally I think it was the safety. But, PFF and a bunch of other people assigned it to Patrick Peterson until he had complained about it on Twitter. But,
Brock Purdy's going to do this to us.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy's going to heave up a completely insane ball that he absolutely should not heave up, and someone's going to magically come down with it.
Brock Purdy only played like that in the playoffs. It is very weird. He played like a Tasmanian devil in the playoffs. He was like chaotic and whatever in ways that you really don't want backup quarterbacks to be. But in the regular season, he was like very a Kyle Shanahan, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Clean cut. Yeah.
Yeah. And like did not. So that's a tough one because I don't know which Brock Purdy we're going to see.
I know which Brock Purdy we are going to see as the Vikings.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the chaos one.
What's the most insane version? Yeah, no, that's
that
fair.
Finds 4 touchdowns he shouldn't find. And we're going to lose a weird heartbreaker.
Yeah, it's going to be a bunch of ones that it's like, okay, he shouldn't have gotten away with it. Okay, he shouldn't have gotten away with it. Okay, that's a negative play. Right. Right.
Yeah. Surely this won't keep. That's going to be the thing is, surely this half of lucky breaks and weird things is unsustainable and a comeback will happen. And it is just going to keep happening.
Sam, the thing you have to remember about the Brian Flores defense is that he called a 0 blitz on 4th down in the 4th quarter on the final play of a game for Miami against the Jets. And it turned out so badly that people started accusing the Dolphins of tanking, which technically they weren't wrong in that accusation, but it wasn't Brian Flores who
That
was
is
paying.
so wild, man.
That's right.
It was
such a snowball.
It was such an extraordinary play call in that situation that people are like, well, surely they're trying to lose now.
We just got a bunch of cuts.
Oh, boy.
How many precisely?
15 total, some of which we've already reported.
All right. I was going to play literally a sounder for every one, but that's a lot. So let's just do one big shebang.
The Vikings posted an article written by Lindsey Young that says, here are the following roster moves announced. Waived Calvin Avery. We had that. Kalon Barnes, CJ Colden, Christian Delorio, Jamison Houston, who joined the team like 2 seconds ago, and Wilson Huber, who we already knew about. Garrett Mogg, we just said. Abram Smith, Josh Sokol, Jordan Ta'amu,
Rip.
Colin Thompson, and Jared Williams. Both of those guys we already knew. They also had
waived
veteran.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then the terminated vested veteran thing, which means they don't go to waivers, and I think it's like different money wise, is Jake Gervais and Tanner Viejo, which we already knew, and Tay Gowan waived injured.
Yeah, so none of these players are surprises. I think the only one that had a reasonable shot, at least in my eye, was Josh Sokol, and that was only because of the Vidarian Lowe trade.
Correct.
So
right. There was a minute where I thought about it, and then it didn't come together. He needed to have like the game of his life against Arizona.
I mean, Wilson Huber had the game of his life, and he's out.
That's true. Yeah. Sokol and Huber, maybe practice squad potential here.
The early waivers are really
Colin
unlikely
Thompson
to be practice squad guys, but given that this is almost everybody at that point, maybe. I think you could maybe see it.
If they don't have Sokol, then they're probably putting another center on the practice squad.
Yeah.
Tay Gowan was your guy for a day or two, Luke.
He had a great camp. Waived injured sucks. I think missing joints and stuff, and missing the final preseason game. That's a guy like that needs that.
If I recall, last year the Vikings did this in 2 waves. I think they did a Monday wave, and then I think they slept on it, and then did the rest of them tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. So that might be it. If the team is releasing the list now for today, that might put a wrap on it for today. So we may have to wait till Tuesday for more. Could be wrong about that. But that means we'll have more breaking news tomorrow, Luke Inman. Can't wait to hit this a million times.
Can't wait.
Yeah, going to be exciting. So here's how the week looks. We've got Luke and I tomorrow. Reggie Wilson joins us on Wednesday. This group back together on Thursday to react to all of it. We also have to squeeze around a kwesi-KOC press conference Thursday as they react to the cuts. So we'll see what time we're going at that day. But big thanks to Arif, Luke, and Luke. Comment below. What do you think of the roster cuts? Who do you think is on the bubble going into final decisions before they pare down to a 53? Subscribe, please, on YouTube. It's free. We're free and available on audio wherever you get your podcasts as well. Amazon Fire, Roku, Sirius XM, good partners of ours as well. Thanks to all for watching today. Thanks to Luke, and Arif for joining. I'm Sam Ekstrom. See you tomorrow on the Minnesota Football Party.